Good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Stay with me. I've got a lot of great charts and data to show you with this video. I'll try to run through it as quick as I can. But firstly, we all know what's going on, with the Iran conflict, the spike in oil prices, the destruction that it's going to cause to the global economy. And for me, I believe it was Thursday this week, this image of Jim Chalmers just sums it up brilliantly for me. And look, Jim Chalmers while I don't like his politics, he is an intelligent person. He's smart enough to know how screwed Australia's economy is if this situation continues. And I'm going to show you some of the data, but I watched him on ABC News and I saw that look on his face when they cut to him and he knew he was going on TV. That looks like a man who's just pooped his pants. He should be pooping his pants because the hyper nanny state, the communist Australian economy, is in massive trouble. And let's have a look at some of that firstly. So what's happening is, as a result of this, this spike in oil price, we saw last month the Reserve Bank of Australia had to raise interest rates, and I've talked in many videos for many years now about how the inflation problem was never solved. Government creates inflation. Inflation's a government tax. Hopefully, you're starting to see what I'm talking about. But the market is now pricing in RBA interest rate of 4.52% by the end of the year. So, in other words, three more. We've already had one interest rate increase in February, and of course, no one thought we were going to get interest rate increases last year. We've already got one. The market is now pricing in three more. One, two, three more, and you can see it in. I've talked about, this. ASX rate tracker before, how it's based on actual market pricing, and you can see that for yourself. And there is now a high probability. We can see here now. This is only data till Thursday. We don't know Friday's data because today is Saturday and it's a business day, and the price of oil spiked again Saturday morning. So this is probably, if anything, it's probably got worse because this was data from when the oil price was 10% lower. Even on Thursday, the market was pricing in a 66% chance that the RBA is going to raise interest rates on Tuesday. I would say that's probably even higher now. And I've seen reports from the big four banks, they're all forecasting an interest rate increase. And this is a massive problem because Australia has a real estate mega hyper bubble. I know some of you think, oh, this is normal, real estate, it's a good investment. What's happening in Australian real estate is not normal. We have the most expensive real estate on the planet. And I just wanted to show you this chart. This is mortgage repayments on entry priced houses for couples aged 25 to 34. So this is interesting. Most economists agree that, or even the banks, even ANZ Bank agrees, if you're spending more than 30% of your income to pay for your house or your rent, you are in, quote, stress. Well, if you want to buy a house in Sydney, you'll be spending 61% of your income. Keep in mind, this is before any of these interest rate increases come in. This is data from a month ago. Brisbane, 50%, Adelaide, 44%, Perth, 42%. I've talked time and time again about how our real estate hyper bubble is destroying our economy. And this is a chart from a couple of months ago as well that shows the median price of houses now touching $1 million. Our capacity to pay based on Cotality, which is a real estate research mob, Australian Bureau of Statistics, and AMP. It would be a deeper dive to explain this, but for the purpose of this video, if you can accept these metrics, you can see that even a month or two ago, people do not have the ability to pay for these houses. How are they going to pay for them if interest rates are going up further? Now, let's move on to the oil problem. This is a chart that shows national oil stockpiles and how many number of days. I don't know why they say imports there, but this is from the International Energy Agency. So yes, that's the source. All right. So all these countries got lots of oil in reserve. Look at Australia all the way down the bottom. We even have less than New Zealand. Again, and this is a problem because China cuts jet fuel to Australia amid oil crunch. So again, this is not me hating on China. I mean, China's got to look after China. We've got the dumb woke freaking the government we have, oil and fossil fuels bad, got to shut them down, can't mine fossil fuels, even though we have lots of them. So we have to import all our petroleum products. So Australia is almost entire. This is from Yahoo News. This is not me. This is data, math, facts. Australia is almost entirely dependent on jet fuel from overseas, with Chinese refineries alone making up 32% of our imports in 2025. 32%. Well, guess where else we get some of our jet fuel from? So Tarek Brooker, who's a journalist I trust, does some good research. 20% of our jet fuel supply comes from Singapore. So the 32% from China, that's gone. China said, tough luck, Australia, no jet fuel for you. Meanwhile, 20% more of it comes from Singapore, right? A couple of weeks ago, it was less than $100. Now it's $211. It's gone up maybe 150% from the low in earlier this year. 150% price. I'm sure that's not going to be a problem for our economy. It's not like anyone needs to fly around in this economy. Of course, what's that going to do to places that rely on tourism a lot? Australia does quite heavily rely on tourism, and I'm up here in Cairns. On the far northeast coast, very much a tourist town, so we rely very heavily. So now I want to move on to another area of why Jim Chalmers is pooping his pants. And firstly, I'm going to show you this chart here, health employment as a percentage of our labor force. All that's happening in this country, and I've shown this in previous videos, is our state governments are going into massive debt to the point where the International Monetary Fund has said that our state governments may require a bailout due to how much debt they're taking on. Right? Our private sector is dying. I'll show that in a chart soon. What's happened is they're running up hundreds of billions of dollars of debt to employ people to work in the sick care system. Almost 16% of our workforce now works in, quote, health employment. New Zealand, it's 10. United States and Canada, yes, it's rising. Everyone's got a demographic problem. But why does Australia need so many more people employed in health? Of course, this is what happens. The government, the communist government, takes over the economy, destroys the private sector. Let's have a look at some more data on that. Now, this is only counting federal government spending. I've made other videos about this showing that once you add state government spending, the Australian government is now 35% of our GDP, 35% of our economy. If we just count the federal government alone, it's 28%. Back in 1974, it was less than 20%. Why does the government need to be 28% of our economy? This is your nanny state. You keep voting for more government, more free stuff that costs an absolute fortune. All right, and here we go, real GDP. This is an interesting chart. I try not to talk about it too much, but this green line is government spending. Right, government spending is just going exponential. It's sucking up it's consuming the whole economy. This is the same chart we just looked at. And then, of course, the annual spending on the NDIS and age pension. I'm not making an ethical argument here about, whether we should take, how good a care we should take care of our fellow humans. We should obviously take care of them, but government is not the best way to do that. Government is horribly inefficient. They do a terrible job of almost everything they do. I don't know how many times I need to show data on this, but have a look at the spend. So we're at 2026, right? By 2036, in 10 years' time, the government's going to be spending $100 billion on age pensions per year and an additional $100 billion on NDIS. So $200 billion our government will be spending paying retired people not to work, paying age pensions. And that's a whole other topic. I have some issues with that in terms of you've got young people who can't afford to pay rent, but they've got to pay for, 72-year-old people who, have some wealth, have some superannuation, but they still get an age pension. But anyway, the point being, the math is getting very bad. And if we come across to another chart, I've talked about how the private sector is dying in Australia, that we have a hyper nanny state. Government is just consuming the entire economy. This graph here shows jobs. So I don't know what color that is, green, whatever color you want to call it, this greeny looking color down the bottom, private market jobs, so excluding government aligned sectors. So if someone starts an NDIS company, for example, that's not really, is that really the private sector? If the government's paying for it, probably not. See those big orange bars, right? A total of, since 2023, jobs, 798,000 jobs have been filled in this country. 657,000 of them are government jobs or government financed jobs. Only 140,000 coming from the private sector. The private sector is dying. And every time I go online or talk to friends and family, they're talking about, oh, we've got to tax the private sector more, got to tax the greedy gas companies, got to tax Coles and Woolies, right? We're killing the private sector. There will be no private sector left if we keep on this path. Here's a chart that will prove that. This is Australia GDP per capita, so that means the size. Now, I don't like GDP as an as a measure of the economy, but that's what everyone uses. That's what government uses, right? GDP per capita means the size of the economy per person, and we're measuring the size of the government part of the economy versus the non-government part of the economy from quarter 20. So it started second quarter 2022. So early in 2022, index balanced to 100. The government has grown by almost 4%. The private sector is down 10%. The private sector per person in this country since 2022, we're only talking 4 years, 10%. The private sector has shrunk per person by 10% in just 4 years. The government is killing the private sector. And then I thought this chart was interesting just to finish up because we have to import. I mean, we import just about everything. you know, um, Maybe not everything, but you know what I mean. Think about all the things you buy or that you use on a daily basis that aren't made in Australia. Here's manufacturing as a share of GDP. Manufacturing as a percentage of GDP. Look where it is in Australia. It's down near 5%, worse than every other major. Well, this is from the government news channel, the ABC news channel, and even they are highlighting that we don't manufacture anything anymore in this hyper nanny state. All we do is run up debt to employ people in government jobs. We've got real estate hyper bubble, and now the RBA is going to have to raise interest rates. So I would say now there's a lot more we could talk about here, but I would say, and while I disagree with Jim Chalmers, he is absolutely a smarter person than me, and he has access to more data, and he probably understands. Even though I disagree with him, I will acknowledge he understands the economy better than me. And I've just shown you a little snippet of some of the things that are probably keeping him up at night. And that look on his face there, when I see that look on his face, I mean, I think that sums it up pretty well. So thank you for listening. If you made it this far, I hope there were some interesting charts there. Obviously, there's a lot more to it that we could look into, but I wanted to give you sort of some brief highlights and show you because, sometimes like we know instinctively or we know, from casually following the news, some of these things that are going on. But when you see the data like that, it really should hit home quite hard. Thank you very much for listening. Talk soon. Cheers.